They never told you the truth, because to awaken is to become uncontrollable. Money, the world's golden master, is not paper, not digital code, not man's invention, but a living, breathing current of spiritual energy. It responds not to logic or labor, but to intention, alignment, and belief. The ancient sages knew this, yet the knowledge was buried beneath banks and contracts sealed behind doctrines of fear. But tonight I will pull back the veil and you will see you've been swimming in an invisible river your entire life, and the current is waiting for you to remember. It begins with a flicker, a static in the flow of your ordinary thoughts. The cashier hands you change, but for a breathless instant the coins feel wrong, not cold but hollow. Plastic symbols sealed with old spells. You look away pretending not to notice, but something in you does. Some of you, weary saints caught in the machine, have begun to sense it. A trembling beneath the transaction, a subtle ache when the debit blinks approved, a shimmering ripple in the spreadsheet stare. In sterile banks and stock floors soaked in fluorescent hum, a question has begun to uncoil. What if money was never meant to be numbers? What if it lives like breath, like rain? We've been told it's simple. Minted coins, printed bills, ones and zeros shuffled across invisible ledgers. They preach this gospel in every school, market, ministry, and screen. But across the whispered millennia, older voices murmur another truth. That money in its core essence was once known, revered as a living current. In ancient Egypt, wealth was not merely counted. It was weighed with mad, not the feather of law, but of cosmic equilibrium. Grain held value only when it echoed the Nile's grace, when its giving aligned with the breath of stars. To violate that rhythm was not merely theft, it was imbalance. It was metaphysical drought. Pause, feel that. Because deeper still in Mesopotamia, the clay cradle of so-called civilization, scribes etched ledgers not just to count, but to echo a divine rhythm of exchange. The earliest accountants were priests, and their tallies were not profits but praises made solid. Cuneiform offerings to the gods of grain and kinship, each number a vibration of trust. Money in its unborn form was kin to prayer. But what has happened since? We have flattened the thunder into ink, sacred offerings into quarterly reports. We've confused the container for the current, the lightning for the wire. That flashing Visa card in your wallet, it's not neutral. It is a talisman, blessed and bound by systems you were never taught to see. Ecclesiastically secular, ritualistically rational, coinage itself was sanctified at birth. In ancient Lydia, first to mint the shimmering coin, currency bore sovereign seals, icons kissed by fire and prophecy in temples of Artemis. These were not just coins, they were offerings made portable. Each exchange a hush of allegiance, and the symbol on your dollar bill, that eye atop the pyramid, it is no accident. Horus watches still, his gaze pulled from Kemet's golden dawn into your trembling wallet, not as judgment, but as remembrance, a symbol meant to pierce forgetting. This has never just been economics, it's been theology in drag. Ask yourself, why do we say money flows? Why do we say cash, stream, currency, global liquidity? Because language remembers what we have tried to forget. Names are fossils of the soul, and the soul remembers water. Somewhere far back when trade was gift and gifts were sacred, money was river, not cage. Not a ledger but a song. A call and response between hearts made visible. Yet something shifted, not all at once but with creeping intention. Not a flood, but an erasure. In Rome, empire loomed. The Senate coined silver not just with Caesar's face, but with Divus, God made man. Payment became obeisance. Economic motion was split from divine exchange. Taxes replaced tithes. Transactions replaced trust. And in that split, a crack, an engineered forgetting. You feel it still. In the tremble when you send a payment and something inside you aches, not from loss but from absence, not from what leaves your account but from what never enters meaning. This is the ghost in the machine. the presence behind the prompt, the whisper beneath the ledger. And yet, on the edges of modernity, the old memory flickers. In the generosity with no return, in the gift that feels like ceremony. In that gasp, when someone gives you more than they need to and your eyes blur not from wealth but from recognition. In that pause, the ledger stutters, the algorithm skips. You felt that, haven't you? That warmth not of consumption but communion, a vibration that says this is real. Spiritual traditions across continents, Vedic Dakshina, Hebrew Maser, Andean Aini, they were not commerce. They were alignment. Rituals of remembrance that echoed a truth long buried, that the divine is not a hoarder. The divine moves as movement itself, not in demand but in dance, offer and answer, pulse and pull. So what if your bank account is a mirror for something else? What if lack and surplus were not economic states but spiritual postures, shadows of how you've chosen to see the river? What if we've all been taught to kneel before a golden mirage built atop hidden wells that have never stopped flowing? This isn't fiction. This isn't fantasy. This is memory returning, old rhythms knocking, ancient currencies humming just beneath your skin. But now I ask you, when the ATM beeps, when the rent is due, when the hunger rises and the fear grips your throat, will you still believe money is metal and code? Or will you remember to listen for the whisper, the one beneath every receipt, the one behind every paywall, the one that has been waiting, patient as stone, faithful as tide, to remind you it was never a prison. It was always a river. So who taught us to forget? And what waits to be unleashed? When the silence is no longer obeyed, and still they watch from below. It was never just paper, never simply coins, not mere numbers lighting up a screen in sterile silence. It feels like money looks like currency, but beneath the surface of this golden mirage, something ancient trembles, something sacred forgotten. The world tells us that money is hard, finite, counted, taxed, hoarded. But something in the deepest marrow of your being knows this isn't the whole story. Have you not felt it? In those rare and trembling hours, when you gave your last coin and were mysteriously replenished, when a job appeared by sheer thought or a debt vanished without record, those moments weren't coincidence. They were breaches in the veil, a whisper that money is not what we've been sold. Money, they said, is value. No, money is power. No, money is survival. But here, the forbidden contradiction, money is a spirit masquerading as metric, imprisoned in digits that do not know their own sacred origin. It is an echo of movement, a current, a flow, and yet we've stopped it inside cages of currency. The ancient Sumerians, the first to etch amounts into clay tablets around 3000 BCE, created money not as matter but as measure, a divine rhythm of energy exchanged within temples, harvests, and tides. The very word for silver in Sumerian Kugbabar means holy, bright, linked more to moonlight and goddesses than profit or debt. This was no secular tool. It was liturgy, ceremony, spirit in form. And then, the descent. Over centuries, that flowing spirit was chiseled into coinage veiled under empire. Roman denarii bearing Caesar's imprinted face claimed divinity for the state, not for the soul. The script changed, the soul was silenced. Later still, in the Byzantine Empire, coins were struck with crosses and saints claiming heavenly favor while binding spiritual energy beneath imperial logic. A divine veil laid over economic dominion. Not just a flood, but an intentional silencing. By the time the Crusaders marched beneath gilded flags financed by borrowed coin, gold could buy salvation or blood. The sacred became negotiable. By the time Christ overturned the tables of the money changers, it was not only about corruption. It was a ritual interruption of illusion. He wasn't raging against commerce. He was shattering the temple of false value, collapsing the theater where spiritual energy was being mistaken for mere trade. In the Gospel of Matthew 21:12, the act seems impulsive. but it was cosmic defiance, an echo of a larger war between form and flow, between truth and exchange. Still, the spell deepened. Institutions rose, and with them priesthoods in suits. Federal banks replaced oracles, and money's mystical current was calcified into central systems: dollar, euro, yen. You were told it lives in savings accounts and quarterly reports, but in truth it lives where intention dares to breathe. Look closer. Modern currency bears the same iconography of the old gods. The eye atop the pyramid on the US dollar bill. That is not capitalism. It is residue. An inheritance from the eye of Providence, perhaps older, still echoing Egypt's eye of Horus, protector of flow, restorer of wholeness. They hid it in plain sight. The invocation that money was once a watcher, a witness to human alignment with the divine. We see similar echoes in Hindu Lakshmi yantra's geometric codes calling forth abundance. In the Chinese practice of Feng Shui, where wealth is not a number but a placement, a direction of energy. From Yoruba cowries to Norse rune staves, cultures once mapped currency not as possession but as portal, direction, dialogue, the unseen in form, but who remembers, who still hears the original hum. We have been cast into hypnosis. Schools teach us to treat money like math. Churches often sidestep it, fearing to name the beast for what it truly is: a bound deity worshipped unconsciously through the rituals of spending, saving, fearing, and envying. We don't serve money. We conjure it with our belief, and then kneel before our own creation. Consider this: why do some drown in gold while others starve in its shadow? Not because they worked harder or lucked better, but because somewhere deep they remembered how to move with the current, not against it. Every fortune built on aligned flow becomes frictionless. Every struggle against it calcifies in scarcity and shame. The prison is so elegant, so intricate that most don't even see the bars. We've made money solid by believing it's solid, but spirit cannot be stacked. It surges, it ripples, responds to resonance. It is not earned, it is invited. This is the great forgetting, and yet there is always a breach in the spell, a shimmer. Perhaps it found you in a flash of generosity, in a moment where you gave without fear and something rushed back to you like a breath returning to its lungs. Perhaps you remember a time when nothing made sense on paper, yet miracles paid your rent. Perhaps just once life chose to remind you, not through logic, but through alignment, the right call at just the right hour, a stranger's gift, a check that arrived with no sender, and behind it all a silence that somehow felt watched. These are not accidents, they are signals, signs. The edges of reality fraying, revealing a deeper script, one more ancient than gold. One inscribed not on stone or ledger, but in vibration and intent. And still, they watch from below, the watchers within the current, the ones we forgot when we declared numbers supreme, the ones who hold the song that money once was. So I ask you now, not rhetorically, but as one marked for memory, when did you stop believing that abundance could be spiritual? And more urgently, are you ready to remember that money was never metal, it was movement? Once they said money was paper, then they said it was numbers. Now they say it's trust, but whose trust? Governed by what gods? Worshipped in which temple? There is a whisper hiding beneath every transaction, a vibration too subtle for the marketplace, too sacred for the stock exchange. You felt it. In the jittering disappointment after a raise that changed nothing inward, in the eerie timing of an unexpected gift, a windfall you didn't predict but somehow knew was coming. These were not coincidences. They were the river showing its shimmer. Coins once rang with divinity, not just currency but current, flow. In the ancient Near East, silver wasn't mere substance, it was sacred measure. The Sumerians used the shekel, rooted in ritual and trade, alike its weight married to the stars and lunar temples. In Egypt, wealth was grain and grain was life, held by Maat, goddess of balance and cosmic order. Not ownership, but alignment. Currency was a way of syncing with heaven. And yet, what do we carry now? Pixels and pressure. Desperation digitized. Like threadbare parchment covering a sacred map, the modern system hides what was once luminous. A veil printed with deadlines and debts concealing the shimmer of something alive. You were not meant to obey ledgers. You were meant to listen to currents. Step outside the neon hallucination of Wall Street and you'll see the dollar, the euro, the yen. They are sigils. Runes scrawled by human hands trying to channel something older than banks, something that lives in the blood, the power to flow, to give, to shape the world. Spiritus pecuniae, the spirit of money, was never dead. It was just bound, shackled to ledgers and screens made to forget the river it once was. And still beneath that forgetting a hum. The eye above the pyramid on the US dollar is not a symbol of prosperity. It is surveillance. The all-seeing eye taken from Egyptian iconography once watched for truth. But here wrapped in Latin incantations, Annuit coeptes novus ordo seclorum, it watches for control. This is not merely aesthetics, it's symbology. These echoes aren't accidents. They are warnings carved in softened stone. The eye that once radiated protection in the halls of Horus now glares down from fiat parchment, hollowed, reversed. Not a beacon from the divine, but a mirror reflecting empire's gaze. Revelation turned reflection. Power inverted. Perhaps you felt it. An unease when handling cash, a quickened breath when the app displays 3 digits instead of 4, a twinge of loss not tied to the amount, but to the silence it leaves within. The Hebrew Kabbalists once taught of the Sephirot, channels through which divine energy cascades into the world. Some interpret the material realm Malkuth as the densest point of divine flow where energy hardens into form. And money, it is among the densest, the most dangerous. A reflection of spiritual blockage or spiritual clarity. So tell me, when you clutch a dollar, whose story are you holding? Money has always followed the laws of nature more than the laws of man. It resists hoarding. It spoils in silence. It multiplies in movement. In ancient Chinese philosophy, Kai, the life force, was guided not by demand but by alignment. Feng Shui practitioners still direct financial energy not through hustle but through harmony. Currents must flow or they stagnate into fear. Even now temples still whisper. Not ones built in marble or glass but inner sanctums. Your heart's magnet, your quiet breath during a waiting moment, your fingertips brushing coins as if touching old prayer stones. The river speaks in symbols, and sometimes, coincidence. A check arrives the same day you prayed with cracked lips. A lost wallet returned in a city where no one returns. Synchronicity, a sacred echo beyond probability. Carl Jung gave this phenomenon a name, but prophets felt it long before. In the Book of Kings, ravens brought bread to Elijah, not metaphor but miracle. The divine led the flow, not the forecast. The truth is the systems we live in were designed not to guide the current, but to dam it. Not just a misalignment, but an intentional silencing. In Rome, the goddess Juno Moneta guarded the mint, moneta, from which we get money. But the irony, Moneta's temple was also an oracle. Her riches were spiritual and secular, one informing the other. But now her temple is rubble. Her voice replaced by interest rates. Still she whispers, in margins, in desperate wishes, in the blessed awkwardness of receiving. Money's origin is mythic, its evolution mathematical, but its essence remains untamed. Alive, it wants to move, but who's listening? Perhaps you've carried poverty and wealth in the same palm and not known the difference, because the true currency was always resonance, and the price of forgetting, silence, a numbness where there once was song. So I ask you, what if your scarcity isn't a symptom of lack, but of misalignment? What if every coincidence you've dismissed was actually a message? What if every financial failure was the spirit of currency refusing to bless what was never aligned with your soul? This isn't about budgets or bookkeeping. This is about memory, the memory of flow, of give and receive, of sacred reciprocity, because the river still runs, even beneath digital deserts, even through concrete jungles of debt. You were taught to fear money, chase it, obey it, but you were never taught to feel its pulse, to see its signs, to speak its native tongue resonance. So the symbols remain forgotten artifacts in our pockets, our banks, our breath. Reference points in a star map we were never taught to read. The river waits, and still, it calls your name just beneath the silence of the ledger. Do you hear it? Or will you keep clutching the stone while the river sings beneath your feet? And still, they watch from below. They told you money was numbers, digits in banks, coins in pockets, contracts in vaults. They taught you to chase it like prey, to hoard it like breath underwater. But somewhere behind the noise, beneath the scorecards of self-worth and ambition, there is a whisper. Can you hear it? When the room falls silent in the hour of doubt, when the job has ended but the hunger remains, when the paycheck arrives but the emptiness still echoes, something stirs, a crack in the fabric, a shimmer in the veil, a tremor in the psyche that dares to ask what if money is not what they said, not merely material, not merely math, but motion, an unseen river, alive, listening, responding. Something beyond arithmetic, more like alchemy, more like the hush of wind through leaves or the way constellations echo the rhythm of tides, something that knows you and waits. In ancient Vedic traditions, the goddess Lakshmi was never cast as a banker. No, she was the goddess of Sri, the shimmering grace that causes flowers to bloom and empires to rise. Her name didn't mean possession. It meant radiance. She didn't dwell in vaults. She moved in hearts. So how did we get here? The transformation began when the Romans inscribed their goddess Moneta into the minting houses, turning the divine into decimal. Moneta, an epithet of Juno, wasn't worshipped in temples of joy but in sanctuaries of surveillance. She watched, warned, accounted. Gone was the dancing current of grace. In its place, the frozen grip of measurement. The sacred became serialized. The river became a ledger. The heartbeat of value was taken hostage by empires. Yet echoes remained like the scent of incense in an abandoned shrine. Even within the dead weight of coined facades, sacred traces dance. The inscription "In God We Trust" on American currency, a relic of the 1860s, whispers of a nation once unsure whether to worship the dollar or what birthed it. What birthed it indeed? Deep in the Hebrew scriptures, manna fell from the sky, provision that could not be hoarded. If you tried to store it, it rotted. It was daily, sacred, responsive. Not currency. Currency incarnate. And the lesson: trust the source, not your vault. Mystics and rebels alike have always known money is rhythm. A vibrating possibility. It is neither earned nor owed, it is aligned. It flows toward resonance, toward the soul, emitting the frequency of enoughness. Do you remember that moment when you gave freely and more returned? When a stranger's generosity arrived exactly on the hour of your need? When the deal collapsed and yet something better slipped in, uninvited, inevitable? Coincidence or currency? The very word currency testifies against the illusion. From the Latin currens, current, a flow. It was never meant to be static, stacked, or strangled. It was a passage, a pulse, a passing thing. But when fear froze it, ego caged it, it stopped being a stream and became a mirror, reflecting only what the wounded self believed it deserved. And now, we clutch it till our knuckles whiten. We earn it by burying our truth. We judge our worth by accumulation and mistake overflow for virtue. But the soul laughs because it remembers. It remembers the time before coin and credit, when barter wasn't transaction but exchange. When circles of giving mirrored the celestial wheel, not measured returns but balanced tides. the give and take of breath of harvest of love. Remember this in the Hermetic texts, whispered among the mystery schools of Hellenistic Egypt. It was taught that, as within so without. This wasn't poetry, it was instruction. Money answers not to toil but to tone. Your inner frequency is the architect of its flow. So ask your heart, what tune are you playing? If fear runs your rhythm, the current slows. If shame clogs your chest, the signal dims. Clenched fists may grasp, but only open hands can receive. That's why the mystics turned inward, not to escape the world, oh no, but to tune it from the inside out. Measure your body's tension around money. Measure the longing, the contraction. These are not financial problems. These are spiritual knots. And quietly they choke the current meant to bless you. But there is a way. When you begin to honor your worth, not inflate it, not defend it, but remember it, the field shifts. The grid reorganizes. What once felt impossible flows in unpredictable grace. This is not mysticism alone. It is physics. It is the quantum field obeying coherence. The Tibetans spoke of lung ta, wind, horse, the energetic steed of fortune that rides with those in harmony with purpose. Not possession, purpose. Align your life inwardly. And the outer money begins to take new shapes, new speeds, new laws. We were never taught this, because a people who unlock abundance from within cannot be controlled from above. You were not born to serve the systems of lack. You were sculpted to resonate with the infinite. So now the choice begins. Will you continue to chase the shadow of money on the wall, or will you plunge into the silent river running through your chest? Will you keep decoding numbers, or will you finally hear the music? Your heart is a magnet for miracles, but only when it stops performing for crumbs and starts singing the ancient song of enough. The river is waiting, and the dam, it's inside you, who taught you to be poor in spirit, and when will you unlearn them and still? In quiet rooms beneath the clink of coins and the hum of numbers, they wait. The old gods, the river spirits, the radiant breath of Lakshmi, still watching, still listening, waiting for you to remember. They told you money was math, calculation, and cold totals, measured in digits, earned through labor, kept through control. But tell me, beloved, have you never felt the trembling under that lie? The strange silence in banks, the sterile weight of coins, the haunting shimmer of wealth that appears and disappears like trickster smoke. You are not mad. You are remembering. There is a whisper beneath the ledger, a murmur ancient as breath, yet never taught in schools, a sacred current disguised as commerce. This thing we call money, it was never just silver and ink. It was and always has been a spirit. A movement, a flowing force older than capital, older than kings. In the oldest temples of Mesopotamia, scribes etched clay tablets to track exchanges, grain, beer, sheep. But within those ledgers was a ritual rhythm that scholars have called the dawn of accounting, and yet it was more. As historian Mark van de Meerup notes, these temple economies operated less like markets and more like offerings to the divine order. Money then began not as possession but participation. Participation in what? A harmonized world where trade pulsed with reciprocity, with trust, and yes, with cosmic flow. But the high priests of control could not allow this stream to remain wild. They built dams of doctrine and banks of belief. They converted spirit into scarcity. But still, the signs slip through. You see them when the light catches a dollar strangely, like an oracle blinking. When a stranger pays your tab and vanishes before you can say thanks, as if the universe tipped its hat. When wind passes through your open window at the exact moment you find a coin not fallen but placed. They call these chance, serendipity. But the ancient Celts saw it otherwise. In the mists of Avalon, if such a place was ever only myth, wealth was not hoarded but conjured. The Tuatha De Danann, the luminous race before men, were said to hold the power of materialization. They didn't save, they summoned. And their gold was never cold, it was living light. And farther east in the womb-quiet temples of India, Lakshmi, goddess of abundance, never walked alone. She required the presence of wisdom, of virtue, of alignment. Thus did kings fall when they sought her with greed. Thus did empires rise when they remembered she was not a thing to own but a presence to revere. In the Atharva Veda she is invoked not merely for wealth but for clarity, because clarity is currency, and blindness is bondage. Now pause. Ask yourself why even now the word currency contains current, a river metaphor hiding in plain sight. Why paper is tender, soft, sensitive, offered. Why we earn, a word from the Old English earnian which didn't mean to get, but to deserve. Are you beginning to see it? The architecture was always a spell. Markets as temples, credit as belief. Even the design of modern currency, from the eye of providence on the US dollar to the phoenix atop ancient Roman coinage, carries echoes of sacred sight. Not by accident. These were not men printing for trade. These were magicians branding empire with divine symbols, and nobody asked why, except those who dreamed when they should have been working, those who paused during profit, those like you. Because even now, beneath the algorithms and hedge funds, a deeper question stirs like thunder beneath the floorboards. What if we never lost abundance? Only forgot how to feel it. The world teaches fear. Governments push interest. Corporations script the hunger. But once, long before paper, before Bitcoin, before even coin, there was cowrie. Shells from the sea. Used as money across Africa, Asia, and Oceania, but not because of rarity. Cowries were chosen because they resembled the feminine gateway. Life, birth, flow. In Yoruba traditions they were sacred, carried messages from Orisha, used in divination, flow and fate, holding court in the palm of your hand. Money was not dead, it listened. But somewhere on the long march into empire we stopped speaking to it, and started fearing it instead. Not just a drift, not just a forgetting, but a severing, not just a flood, an intentional silencing. Look to the councils of Nicaea, to the burning of the library of Alexandria, to every codex hidden by sword and crown. Again and again, when the feminine rose, when the magical surged, when the memory returned, flame followed. Pagans condemned, scribes exiled. 1,000 years of listening buried under gold-plated idols. And yet, the graves of those who whispered this truth are many. The Cathars of 13th century France, accused of heresy, burned, believed material wealth was an illusion best seen through with purity of heart. Their gospel was not profit but inner sufficiency. They perished, but their ashes hummed with memory. Memory. That strange ache that wakes you at night, burning like a question you were never taught to ask. Because here we are, standing at a threshold older than scripture, more sacred than stock price. The veil is thin. Can you feel it? This is the hour of remembering. The gate where spirit offers its hand, but only if you're willing to release what you thought was real. Will you cling to the numbers that caged you? Or dare to follow the music that once made you dance? And still, they watch from below. It begins with this forbidden contradiction, this sacred fracture in the facade of the modern world. The more we chase money, the more it flees. The tighter we grip it, the colder it becomes. And the deeper we fear its absence, the more we see it as a god. Yet, have you never felt it? In a lucid moment, beneath fluorescent lights, in the stillness between invoices, in the echo of a stranger's generosity, a flicker, a shimmer, a secret current just beneath the number-crusted crust of it all. Your bank account is not wealth. Your wage is not your worth. And the bills trembling in your hand are merely tokens, not of value but of binding. In the Vedic world, wealth was not hoarded, it flowed. It was Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, not confined to gold or ledger, but a living presence courted through harmony, reverence, and sacred offering. She was beauty, generosity, radiance. Even now in Indian households she is welcomed, not stored. Invoked, not calculated, but we stopped invoking. We mechanized money into digits and dread. We turned gods into graphs, and somewhere in that descent we forgot the dance. When the Greeks whispered of Plautos, the personification of wealth, he arrived blindfolded, dispensing riches not by merit but by fate's rhythm. Wealth wasn't earned, it was flowed by cosmic alignment. The blindfold, still there, but now we've put it on ourselves. And what of the Hebrew scriptures? Ecclesiastes warns of the futility of toil without spirit, saying, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money." A whisper across trembling parchment, a divine sigh in the dust of forgotten scrolls. The ancient Chinese called it qian, money, as part of the flow of qi life force. Coins were round with square holes symbolizing heaven and earth in harmony. But when harmony broke, so did prosperity. The Tao does not reward frenzy. Flows where frequency aligns. Even Rome, empire of empire, entwined coin with cult. The emperor's stamped profile was more than a likeness. It was a ritual imprint, a declaration of divine right. To spend was to worship, to possess was to obey. And what is inflation if not a spell unraveling? A temple collapsing inward, its equations no longer holding. All these old voices ripple with one truth: money was never meant to be trapped. It was never meant to sit still. It's a river, a rhythm, a spirit. We've taken the infinite current of life and shut it behind vaults. We've labeled it as income, interest, inflation, but these terms are veils. Digital spells masking a deeper ceremony. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the central banks, yes, they shape the form, but not the force. The force predates the Fed. It breathes through Wakan trails, Anasazi petroglyphs, Nigerian cowries, and the Nile's first barter. In ancient Egypt, trade was fertilized by Mot, the divine order. Not just commerce, but cosmic alignment. You see, the Nile didn't just flood for crops. It reminded them wealth comes when the spirit world and the human realm move in sync. Debt was not a sin, it was a dissonance. And repentance, a return to flow. In the shadows of the Mayan pyramids, jade and obsidian moved not for price but for ritual, offerings to time itself. The gods were not bought, they were remembered, and memory itself was currency. And so the truth hisses through cracks in the vault: the dollar you hold is a spell you obey. The check you chase is a shadow of forgotten fire. You are not poor because the market denied you. You are poor because someone stole your remembering. There are whispers still in the ringing of coins dropped in silence, in the sudden arrival of unexpected grace. Cold logic cannot explain a miracle, but the soul remembers its signature. And still money pulses beneath it all, still alive, still conscious, still calling, in dreams of water, in uncanny timing. In that time a bill was paid from nowhere. In the silent knowing when you gave what little you had and more returned. Money is a mirror of the soul's movement, a reflection of resonance, a servant to those who serve the river. They told you money was math, but it has always been music, harmony, pattern, vibration, timing. And you are the tuning fork. You are the dam or the gate. So I ask you now, when did you first feel the current move through you before you named it money? What was taken from you when you were taught to fear the water instead of learning to swim? And more than that, what still waits beneath your clenched expectation, ready to surge when you remember how to open? Who profits from your forgetting? And who might you become if you danced again with the infinite current? And still, they watch from below.